Have you ever felt like every time you achieve some success, instead of relieving the pressure you're under, the bar just seems to raise yet again? It's like every win just seems to come with more responsibility, more stress, more to manage. Well, if that's been you, this episode might challenge the way you think about growth. For many of us, maybe you, somewhere along the way, success got tangled up with exhaustion. More impact started meaning more sacrifice, and fulfillment took the back seat to performance. Welcome to Change Made Easy. Changing your habits, routines, and behaviors is hard. We make it easy. I'm Paul Levitin, and I help high achievers just like you who feel stuck bridge the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Traditional self help doesn't work. It's either too rigid, too generic, or too overwhelming. My approach is different. I simplify change by making it so easy it can't not happen. Using my easier framework, I'll help you create habits, routines, and behaviors that stick for good so you can stop struggling and start thriving. It's that easy. What if real success isn't about doing more, but about becoming more aligned with what actually matters to you? Bob Glazer is the founder and CEO of Acceleration Partners, a best-selling author, and a recognized expert in the executive and organizational leadership space. His work focuses on sustainable growth, both personally and professionally, without sacrificing health, relationships, or integrity. Bob's podcast, Elevate, is one of the best podcasts on personal growth and leadership that you can find. And his new book, called The Compass Within, is a guide to both finding and living by your core values. In this episode, Bob unpacks the problem with chasing success without ever defining what enough means to you. A counterintuitive way to think about capacity, and why protecting it might be your most important skill, both professionally and personally. The hidden cost of saying yes too often, even to good opportunities. And a subtle shift that separates people who scale sustainably from those who burn out quietly. Importantly, none of these are productivity hacks. They're perspective shifts. Because if your growth consistently makes your life worse, something's off. And no amount of discipline can fix a definition of success that's misaligned. This conversation isn't about slowing down. It's about growing in a way that you don't need to recover from. And it's not about finding some random version of success that's imposed on you. It's about aligning your growth and your life with your values, even if you don't know what those are yet. And with that, please enjoy this conversation with Bob Glazer. Speaking on the topic of core values, what is the difference between something that's just a deeply held belief and what actually makes it a core value?
Yeah, so there are a lot of things that we believe, and maybe even deeply, and some of those things may not be true, right? I may believe that Alaska is a great place to visit, and I've never been there before. Core values are a little bit different. I think they're the non-negotiable principles that guide our behavior and decisions. They're intrinsic; they're not aspirational, right? They reflect who we've been, and these things run pretty deep, and who we are, not who we wish we were. They're consistent. They should show up across all areas of life, work, relationships, and personal decisions. And they're clarifying. They can help you make better decisions about who to spend time with, what work to do, and where to live. So that to me is the real differentiator. There are a lot of things that I believe and that are important, but they don't kind of come into that highest echelon of the closely held principles.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think of core values as you said, clarifying almost a lens that we can view things through, such that if I see this through the lens of my core values, it helps me make this decision easier for whatever I'm trying to decide, whether it's work, relationships. You mentioned something that could be potentially it sounded like negative, is that people have these aspirational core values, or how I want to be instead of how I am. And I'd like you to expand on that a little bit, because I feel like that is one, how a lot of people use core values, and two, how we were taught to do it. Like, it's the vision boarding, or speak it into existence type of thing, of like, even if I'm not this person right now, if I hold this as a value, that's who I can become. So am I doing that wrong?
Yeah, the vision board I think is a little more about goals than values, right? And where you want to go, not what do we believe. Yeah, it doesn't work when it's aspirational. Let me give you an example. Like I am not patient as a person. There's a lot of strengths to that. That's probably part of my find a better way. Like I'm constantly tinkering and trying to figure things out. And I would like to be more patient, right? I think being more patient would probably fulfill a value of being better, or some other things around being better listeners. But to say a core value of mine is patience would just not be true. um, and so it's not helpful. It's not something I'm trying to be better at, is not an orienting, or that I want to be, is not an orienting principle that I can point back to for 20 or 30 years of my life that has been kind of an orienting principle for me. So I get it. We all want to be better. Sometimes we're not living up to the standard of a value that we've already identified. And so we're frustrated that we could do better and be that. And that's fine. That's just not living it. But these are not things that you want to be. The vast amount of social science and studies and cognitive philosophy and discipline says that most of these things are pretty hard formed by 20 years old.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. So I have your book here, The Compass Within. I was given an advanced copy and read through it very quickly. For those listening, I'm going to have links to it. And it's a short parable, which I really like that you used. It makes it very readable and easy to, I think, for anyone to kind of follow along with. So I love that you did that. But in that story, Jamie, the main character, he finds, no spoilers, he finds at some point that one of his core values basically stems from an experience that he had in childhood. And I'm curious if you found, either in your studies or in your own personal life, that is that how it works with all of our core values? Are these things that something happens, it's maybe quote unquote a trauma or something positive that happens, and that forms us into who we are? Or are these things that can fluctuate as we get older and that we could even choose as adults? Hey, 1 second before we continue. If you're enjoying this episode, if you're learning something from this show, if you're catching yourself saying, man, this is so helpful, this Paul guy is pretty smart. First of all, thank you. But secondly, if that is you, you might have asked, how can I work with Paul? Can he help me create the change I've been looking for? And if you have, you're in luck. Because after 12 years as a coach, both in person and online, for the first time ever, I'm opening up my calendar specifically to talk to you, my podcast listener. Use the link in the show notes to book a completely free coaching session. If you need help with nutrition, fitness, motivation, mindset, basically anything that goes into building your happy, healthy life, then I want to talk to you. Click the link in the show notes and let's chat. I created this podcast to help, and now I want to go deeper. This is the first time I've ever offered anything like this, and I don't know how long it'll last or how long I'll be able to keep doing it, so take advantage while you can. All right, now let's get back to the show.
Yeah, it's the most common question I'm asked. A good friend of mine, Philip McKernan, who's a high performance coach who works with leaders all around the world and has done a lot about values and where they come from. I said to him when we were doing a launch thing for the book, I said, in your experience, like, what percent of values come from this childhood stuff, for better or for worse? And he looked at me, he's like, a little less than all of it. And yeah, so from hundreds of thousands of conversations now, and again, all of the research about how our moral reasoning forms in our frameworks, the vast majority of it is from those early experiences, divided into things that we are doubling down on that were really important to us, and things that we're, desperately trying to run away from or do 180 degree the opposite. I think if you find people for whom like a core value emerged later in life or became a higher priority, there tends to be some sort of catastrophic something that happened later on, a relationship or health or death of someone or something that totally reprioritized. But look, I was on another podcast, sorry, cheating on you, with the host this morning, and it was a very vulnerable conversation, and he was really stressing something around health. He's like, every night I say gratitude for my health, my kids' health, my wife's health. Like, health is important to me. I was like, look, well, it sounds like health is a core value. I got to ask you, like, did you grow up in a super healthy environment or unhealthy? And he grew up in a house full of alcoholics, who all died basically. And I said to him, look, if you're sitting around someone at a bar and they're complaining about their stomach and they're having 6 beers and a thing of hot wings, and he's just like getting enraged as I'm like saying this. And so I was kind of pointing that out to him. And so it's not surprising that someone would make an orienting philosophy. And look, he had a couple other core values. And one of it was like, you own it and you do better. He's like, I came home to passed out, drunk parents every way. I should have been homeless or whatever. And I just was like, I'm not going to do this. So when I hear people talk about being a victim and it wasn't on them and it wasn't their fault, like it just doesn't sit well with me. And so it was just really interesting. This morning, someone was sending me their core values from a company I spoke at last week, and he talked about being reliable and stable. That's a core value. Again, I just know to ask this question. I said, so did you grow up with a ton of instability, or did you grow up in a perfectly stable, or you had someone who was, and he's like, we were really poor and there was a lot of tough financial stuff and it was a lot of up and down. I'm like, so I get it. So I get stability becomes really important. And I am not a therapist, but one of the things I found myself, because people are trying to say, they're like, I love my parents, but, and I'm like, you don't have to say I love my parents, but you can say I love my parents and like, I love my parents and they worked really hard. And my mom was a single mom and she was never around and I was lonely. And so it's not surprising that I started an after school program. And most people's passion actually lies closely to this pain. And so I'm with this guy on like, this is not about blaming. It's not about going back and relitigating. Just understand that these things are why you show up how you do today. And my passion completely comes from pain. And a lot of people's does.
Yeah, I love that story about the last podcast you were on, and it's very illuminating. They kind of go hand in hand together. What we've talked about so far is like values are not aspirational. It's not about what you want to be, but what you are. And then
Yeah.
the next logical step is like, okay, well, that comes from how you were raised or the things that happened to you so far in your life. And when I hear it that way, then I think of it more as a a way to figure out how to live. It's more a framework to show you why you are currently living the way that you do or feeling the way that you do. So rather than it being like, well, my value is to be healthy,
Right.
so I'm going to go become healthy, rather it is to look at yourself where you are now and see what has led me to become this person in this situation that I'm in. And clearly it is
Right. Yeah. And
it's
why is it such a trigger for me? And look, that person probably is frustrated when people on their team are not healthy or behaviors that are not healthy or when cultures are not unhealthy. And that's a great thing, but you got to understand where it came from because every strength overused is a weakness. I think that's my definition. You can take any core value that's a good thing and you can overuse it and it becomes problematic for you. And I think that's what a lot of us do. So if you don't have that self-awareness, you're often turning a strength into a weakness. He might totally offend someone who's got a health problem that they can't control, right? And so that was a interesting example of that.
Yeah, every strength overused as a weakness is a great quote. Recently, I think it was in one of your newsletters, you spoke about building a core value supervillain. Can you explain what that is and maybe who your supervillain is?
Yeah. So I want to be clear because some people like the supervillain is a hypothetical and it could be a collection of behaviors, not a person. But a supervillain is someone or a collection of behaviors that completely represents the inverse of your core values all in one interaction. So if we laid out all your core values, I could, if I'm fast enough and creative enough, be like, how does it feel if you're hanging at the party with this person and they're all the opposite of your core values? And you should start getting like that last host did and get like red in the face and be like, please get this person like away from me. So that's the concept. I was coaching someone, a CEO I work with a few weeks ago, and he's been incredibly frustrated over this issue. And we were also working to finish his core values, and we had most of them kind of done. And so frustrated over this issue, and it's just been like dragging him down. And actually, like I was like, this is angering you so much. Let's use this as a test. Let's filter this against the core values. And when we went through the list and finalized it, this interaction violated literally all of his core values in one interaction. So I was like, it's your supervillain. No wonder why. Look, if I told you what it was, it wouldn't sound like even that big of a deal. But to this person, it just touched on the opposite of all of those. And that is the concept of a supervillain. It's the opposite of multiple core values.
So what would your supervillain be?
Yeah. So behaviorally, my core values are find a better way and share it, health and vitality, self reliance, respectful authenticity, and long term orientation. So this would be someone who is in the room talking about how I can't get better. They're having 6 beers. They're talking about their trust fund. They're being completely disrespectful. And they're talking about the crypto scam that they're trying to like make money off this week. Like it would be like, please throw me out of the window. Like I need to get away from this person. So, I've learned to identify that, and I think this is a struggle for people too around family and friends and people who's a core value violator, but they come with someone else who you're really close with, and you just part of it is that recognition. Oh, they're just going to say these things. They're going to start talking about again to my sort of self-reliance. They're going to talk about their trust fund again and how they're annoyed at the administrator because they're getting the distributions late, and like I just need to like put up a wall and sort of like just ignore that because I know that like that violates my core value of self-reliance. They're spending all this time talking about their dependence basically.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I can see why someone would viscerally feel affected by that when they're going against so many of these deeply held beliefs. I know that recently you decided that your daughter was going to run a 10K, and instead of just cheering her on, you decided to go and run that with her at her side. And I'm curious, when you make a decision like that, is there a specific core value that informs that, where you're like, this is my blank,
Yeah.
and like that, what is the decision making
It's
process?
funny because it's just like I'm so excited to have her do it. And I'm like, well, of course I'll come support you. And then when I look down, I'm like, oh, finding a better way. She's doing something she's never done before. It's about health, right? She's self-reliant. She's started it. She's doing it on her own. She's, working on a training plan. So you just find that those things that align to your core value are naturally the things that you want to, jump in on and do. And so it was like, yeah, I'll come cheer you on, and then I was like, hey, I'll come, I'll come run it with you, and that's how it's impacted my parenting. I started kind of giving myself permission to not worry about the stuff that I'm not good at or I don't want to do, and I show up best as a parent doing I'm great with my kids on ropes course or giving them feedback or helping them be independent or doing something that's kind of healthy with them. Like naturally, like you're gonna show up for your family like best in alignment with your core values.
Yeah, it brings to mind a quote. I don't know if it's a quote or a common kind of cliche in the self-help, self-development space, which is something like, when the no is clear, the yes is easy, or something like that, right? It's like when we know what to say no to, and we can hold that line, it makes us more able to pour into the things that actually do matter, and the things where we can best spend our finite amount of time.
Yeah, and look, if you are going to orient around the big three, as I talk about the book, or your values, you'd say, look, I should do the things that align with my values, and I should stop spending a lot of time with the things and people that don't. And I'm obviously going to be happier in the zone of alignment than the zone of out of alignment. In fact, one of the ways you kind of pressure test your values is you put them on your desk, you lay them down, and over the next month or two, look down when you're in flow or it's great, I had an amazing interaction, like, oh, it checks as a couple box, or super frustrating situation, I was annoyed, I was mad, and and I looked down like, oh yeah, that was the opposite of 2 or 3 things.
You mentioned just now the big three choices, and you kind of touched on it in the beginning. But what are those three choices that you say need to be in alignment for us to have a happy life?
Yeah, the book is oriented around Jamie and his journey on his big three. There are a lot of decisions we make, but I think no more important than who we choose as a partner. If we choose one, either the vocation, the type of work we choose to do, or where we choose to do it. Sometimes those are one and the same. Sometimes they're discrete. And then the community or communities that we choose, the people we choose to surround ourselves with. That could be physically or where we live, or the communities that we belong to, and those choices have to be value aligned to work.
S- It's so simple when you put it like that, because if those three things are good, probably life is good. And with one of those three things is out of whack or out of sync, life can get challenging. And if all three are,
All
then that's
3 are
when it's
gonna be
turmoil.
very discontented,
Right.
right. Yeah.
Right. So, how do you start to advise people or companies or anyone when they start to see misalignment in our value versus our big three values versus our big three, specifically in the sense that where we work, who we choose to partner with, where we live, those things are hard to change. And yet, if we're assuming that values are instilled with us from our early in our childhood, and like you said, to change our values late in life usually takes something big and catastrophic, which one is actually the thing that we can fix or improve?
Well, it's funny. People jump way too quickly to the alignment when they still don't have the clarity that would enable the alignment. I think if you do the work and you have the clarity, then the alignment becomes really obvious, and you will, it's not that you weren't frustrated, it's that you were super frustrated. Now you understand why, and you need to think about whether it's resolvable or not resolvable. So I talk about this concept of danger zone. So core values, when people ask me, okay, what about with a partner, or what about with a team, or what about a company, we're not probably going to be in unison. We're not going to be identical, right? My wife and I don't have identical core values, and we have one that's a little problematic. And I'll share it. But they're in harmony, right? That's different than them being opposite, right? And if you opposite, and we look at opposite as good and bad, like generous and ungenerous, truth teller and not truth teller, but that's not how most things lay out. So let me tell you a story. And these are two real people, and they're not together, but let's imagine they get together. So Jane was 10 years old when her mom was told that she was dying from cancer and had a year to live. And Jane and her mom lived 7 years. And so Jane spent all of her teenage years that there is no tomorrow. If we're going to celebrate it, we do it today. We do the birthday, we do the thing, whatever. There's literally no tomorrow. And so that became a protective mechanism for Jane. And that is her orienting philosophy in life. She beats this nice guy named Rory. Now, Rory had a gambler dad, who also drank and always blew their family money. And he had to work to always figure out what was next in college. And so he is very much a plan for tomorrow, save and plan for tomorrow person, right? And both of these came from very formative experience that drove their operating system. So what happens when Jane and Rory date and get married? Well, this is a danger area, right? He doesn't like to plan ahead, and he very much believes in saving. Now, they might be able to get around this through some conversation and some self-awareness, where they say, look, it's really important to me if we save $1,000 a month, and I don't care what you spend the rest on, right? And we plan one family vacation a year in advance, and you plan one impulsive vacation, and I just go, and we both kind of learn how to navigate on this. But imagine if I picked 3 other examples like that, where these people are married and they come to the table with the opposite operating system on 4 of these things. That's a tremendous amount of energy to consume every day.
Yeah, it's as you're speaking, I'm just kind of like nodding my head along, and it's funny yeah, as a story about a potential relationship, but I can also see this in a work relationship with
Yeah,
a manager and a subordinate or a
correct.
business
And they
partner.
have no idea. They've never had this discussion. And I've heard these. I have heard a fight about a budget. This is in one of my presentations with someone I knew who was not heard as a kid and felt really important that people are heard and listened to, with someone who ended up in finance and like in a controller world, who grew up dirt poor and in an environment where they were told not to waste and make every penny count. He feels that she's being incredibly wasteful and never talks about things that she can cut. And she's feeling like he is not listening to her. And they are probably never going to get around those types of disputes without some, if they self-awareness or willing to discuss that. So this stuff shows up in our leadership at work. The difference is, are you driving the steering wheel because you know it and you can communicate, or is this a little bit like driver's ed, where there's a hand on the wheel on the other car and the car's going all over the place? Because these things define your leadership. The really great leaders know it and communicate it. The not so great leaders are driven by, it's the iceberg under the water. is how I explain it.
Yeah, totally. I love the driver seat, passenger seat analogy. I use that all the time. Listeners know I say that's what this podcast is all about. Are you in the driver's seat of your life? Are you in the passenger seat where life is happening to you?
Right.
And as we're talking, we talked about a romantic relationship. We talked about a work relationship. You talked about your parenting. All of these things follow the same rules, which tend to be that if you know your core values and act in alignment with them, things become easier. And if you are out of alignment with your core values, things become harder. So now at this point, it seems only prudent to ask, how do we figure out what our core values are? And I know that's the point of the whole book. And again, people can go and grab that.
Yeah.
But if you have, I know that in the book, you have 5 questions that the main character
Yeah.
goes through. So if you wanted to, we don't have to go through all 5. If you want to, we can, or just quickly touch on like 1 or 2 of the
Yeah.
most impactful ones.
So as you get to the end, there's actually 6. We made it easier. And I have these because people are always trying to probably write them down on these podcasts. And so people ask me to. So if you go to robertglazer.com/6, there's both the 6 questions and a video of me filling them out. So if you want to do this exercise, like this is the place to start. It's robertglazer.com/6. These are behavioral based questions designed to pull out these highs and lows that sort of tease out the theme of your core value. So simpler one. In what professional roles or jobs did you do your best work? And the answer is not Price Waterhouse, right? The answer is when I worked in accounting and I was given autonomy to run my own team and talk to clients, and like you got to actually describe like what was it about it. There's more of a serious one. What would you want said about you in your eulogy? Like, how do you want people to talk about you and the impact you made? This is one of my favorites. What help, advice, or qualities do others come to you for? Like, if you really think about that, like, what are people always coming to you for? That's sort of tends to be your special ability. And then there's some opposite questions, because we talked about how opposites really are a pressure test on the core value. So like, what are qualities in other people that you really struggle with? So you would answer these questions. And if you don't want to do all the work in the book or the course, which is part of the book, I find that people who do this, spend a half an hour with this couple, look at the list and they're like, I did not expect that to come up 5 times, or that word. And then it's starting to form those into themes and running them through my core validator, which really is the point of differentiation from almost any other core value exercise that I've seen.
Yeah. And again, for those listeners, I'll have the link to that in the show notes as well for anyone listening. So you can go and watch Rob do it in real time. Also, again, the book is short and easy and fun to read. So I do recommend getting it and actually going through this for yourself. I recently finished the book and I did this myself. So I have my own core values written here, and it's different. It is different than anything I've ever come up with in the past, meaning I've done lots of core values activities in the past. I've been in this space for almost 15 years, and this is nothing new in theory, but in practice, it was different because of the validator, and also because of your emphasis, I believe, on things being more of a phrase
Kind of
than a
word,
simple
yeah.
word. So could you expand on that a little bit?
What's kind of funny, and when I do my presentation on this, I show like all the company core value stuff that you see and acronyms, and everyone's like, oh, like this is such garbage, right? Like heart and this and shape and whatever. But then when we talk about personal core values and you go look at all the exercises and the courses and the stuff, people give you a keyword list and they tell you to pick from these 1-word platitudes, and that's your core value. So it's kind of funny that we like throw up on the corporate side of it appropriately, and then we do the same thing on the personal side. So I don't think 1-word core values can be actionable or decision oriented. Common ones are integrity and family, and I've heard 10 different definitions of integrity. And how does family help you in a leadership context unless you understand what sits below family? Like how you show up for your family and what you define as family probably is a deeper core value that would help you across all these different spectrums of community and otherwise, which is like, maybe it's making people belong. Maybe for your family, you feel included. And so that's what you do in the workplace and you do with your friends. And maybe because you felt excluded, and for another person, it's about trust. And for another person, it's about defending the people closest to you. To me, that's not my definition of like family is very important to me, but I do not believe in, like, I call it the drunk uncle. When people say family, I'm like, the drunk uncle is like inappropriately grabbing people at the wedding. And you go, oh, that's not okay. Or, oh, he's family, like, so now we start to understand really what family means, right? In different contexts. So if you run through these steps of validation, which is if I take these themes and I group these words into theme, can I use them to make a decision, past or present? Because if the theme's not going to be a decision oriented thing, then it's not going to help you. The thing that everyone loves about this the most is the anti-value test. If you think about the opposite, is it really painful and it strikes a nerve? That's how you know something is a value. Because when a value is violated, it feels horrible. We talked about inventing the opposite archetype. Like if I sense that someone's core value is generosity or giving or stability, let's go with a stability. I'm like, how do you feel with someone who comes in and they're like guns a blazing and they're like and they're like viscerally uncomfortable. Like this person is not reliable, not stable. This is the opposite of my value. So those are, did I get the right theme? The 3 and 4 questions are, is it a phrase rather than a word so that it's distinctive and I know what it means? And the last one, is it worded in a way that you'd objectively rate yourself on this? And this is where I think a lot of company core values fail too. I was arguing with someone about the company core value of a nonprofit, and they wanted to be celebrate diversity. And I was like, you're never going to say that in a performance review. Are you going to say, hey, Paul, on the discussion yesterday on the sales call, you did not celebrate diversity? Like, it just sounds so awkward. You might say you didn't listen and include all perspectives. You didn't think before you acted or something like that. But you have to find that you would like use this in a normal sentence. And this, I think, is true for company and people. So just think about something like self-reliance. Can I use it to make a decision, past or present? Yeah. Should I raise money for my company or should I go at it alone? Well, I'm kind of a go at it alone person. Can I imagine what is the opposite of it? Like people that are super dependent and needy and drives me crazy, right? Is it a phrase rather than just one word? Yes. And can I objectively rate myself on it? Yeah, I can be like, look, you know what? I haven't been stepping up as much. I've been too dependent. I've been waiting for things to happen to me. That's the threshold of a core value that really helps you make better decisions.
Yeah, I love the idea of stress testing these. And again, like the whole word thing is similar as you're talking about, the single words. One I hear all the time is health. And people are like, oh yeah, like health is a core value. And it's like, well, what does that mean? It's such
Yeah.
a,
What
such
does
a
that mean?
large, ambiguous word. You're talking about physical health, mental health. Usually if you're good in one, you're probably somewhere it needs work on the other, or vice versa. So I like the idea of being more specific and removing the ambiguity of this, because that's really what it's about, is using the stress test, using these questions to know, is this truly something that I am being guided by?
Right.
And if so, I can start to use that to make those decisions, as you said, about who I work with, about where I live, or about all these other things.
Right.
And again, I can't, say highly enough to just go get the book or to do this activity on yourself, because, it's so worthwhile. But something I wanted to talk about as well, this being the Change Made Easy podcast. You had another quote. I write down your quotes a lot because I read a lot of your stuff. But you had a quote recently that said,
Hopefully they're mine. Yeah.
yeah, well, it's hopefully. Well, you have one here that I wrote down from Roy E. Disney, but I noted that it wasn't you.
Okay.
But,
Yeah.
but no, you had a quote where you said, "People rarely change simply because they're told to. In many cases, we only change when an experience holds up a mirror to something that we want to be different about ourselves." And that's a big part of this podcast and everything I do, is that I want to make change easy, because if it were as easy as just saying, hey, do this differently, the world would be a
Yeah.
different place. We wouldn't need coaches or advisors or consultants or literally anything, because everyone would just say, oh, just do this and it would be done. But we know
Right.
that doesn't happen in practice. That's not how humans work. So I'm curious, what was a time where you had that mirror held up to you and it forced you to take a look at yourself and what you were doing and create the change that maybe you were putting off?
Yeah, it's interesting. The reason why this parable, I think, has resonated with a lot of people is because Jamie is just a mirror and a vehicle. I could tell you had to do these things or what they do for you, but they read about Jamie and they remember a painful conversation with a boss or with a sister or something, and it just sort of it shows I don't want to be that person, or I need to do that. Versus if I told them to do it, they wouldn't want to do it. So I've had a few of those inflection points. I think one of them was right before I figured out my core values, where I was like frustrated. Like people were having the impact I wanted to make. My company was quote unquote successful. I saw other people doing what I wanted to do, make the impact I wanted to make. that's when I started kind of leading into my writing. And that's when I kind of figured out my values. And I think what finally got me over that bridge was figuring out what is it that I value and leaning into that, 2 and 3x. And I like to say, like, it didn't occur to me until a couple of years ago when I was backstage for a speech and someone was reading my bio, and I realized that there was only one line, that Robert Glazer is the founder of Acceleration Partners, that was actually before my core values. Every other accomplishment that was listed was after, when I sort of figured that out and leaned into it. So I had a lot of frustration, but because I wanted to change, but I didn't know into what and how. And I agree with you. Like, it's really, what is the quote? Everyone loves progress, no one loves change. And a lot of this work is actually predicated, ironically, in that you are not going to change a fully formed 40-year-old adult in the workplace. Like, I lead from my core values. I can change my awareness of it and my understanding of it and how I react, but I'm not encouraging people to change who they are. Like I think that I think it's actually served them probably really well. And while it has pros and cons, I think what they need to do is change their relationship to it and their understanding of it.
Yeah, it's kind of like trying to paddle a boat against the current. It's just much easier to go with the flow of things.
Right.
You can't change the way the water is flowing, but you can change the direction that you're paddling. Another similar quote that I like is like, everyone wants to have written a book, but no one wants to write. And it's like sitting. Sometimes we can, wax philosophic about this stuff for days and hours, but at a certain point, we do have to take the action. We do have
Yeah.
to do the thing. So
And
when
by the
you
way, do you know how a book gets written?
one word at a time.
I mean, close to that. I think people have this concept of Mark Twain, and I have to go off in the cabin for 4 weeks and write the book. It gets written when every day you decide to spend 10 minutes writing 300 words rather than 10 minutes looking at your friend's food on Facebook, right? And after 90 days of writing 10 minutes of words, or 90 days of looking at your friend's food on Facebook, you will have a fundamentally different result depending on where you decided to put that energy.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting as you say that. I'm looking over my core values that I did the other day, and
Let's hear them, by the way.
so the three
Yeah.
the three phrases I came up with:
Yeah.
simplicity is the route to happiness,
Yeah.
time is your greatest asset, and be kind first.
I love be kind first. That's very clear, and it's an opener, and if you're doing it and if you don't do it. And so again, is kindness, look, we'll put you in the hot seat here. So kindness, did you grow up with kindness or unkindness?
Well, if I think about it, I don't want to say unkindness, but definitely like arguing and
Right. You're
poking
doing the
fun
but.
and
You're doing the but, not the and. I
yeah,
said before, like, or did I say, like, there's a
yeah,
line I've been using with people. Yeah, like,
yeah,
I love my family, and
yeah,
like, there was
yeah,
a lot of
definitely.
arguing, there was a lot of fighting, there was a lot of not giving the
Right,
benefit of the doubt,
right.
and like, so that's something that's important to me,
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
Yeah,
That's definitely where it is, and it's just I think a lot of this is also through from childhood, but also through my I feel I've been very fortunate being a coach and like helping people
yeah,
change for so long. I've just been like I've just learned that that's why this is change made easy. It used to be do the hard thing because it's like things are hard. You just gotta you just gotta man up sometimes. You just gotta do the hard thing. And what I've learned over working with thousands and thousands of people is that again, if it were that simple, it would already be done. And if I thought being mean to people made the world a better place or anything like that, like it just everything. It's like to me, I use the concept of with my clients a lot, foundational habits, and a foundational
yeah,
habit is one such that when you do it, everything becomes better, and when you don't do it, everything becomes worse. So for me, that like leading with kindness is foundational in that every interaction I have will be better if I do it, and if
right.
I don't do it, probably life is going to be harder.
Right. So you're at the party and you see someone walk up to someone else next to you and just insult the guy next to you for no reason. Like, is your blood boiling? Sort of.
Well, I'm still from New York, so if it's a funny insult, I might laugh. But in general, yes, it's just like I want. So that's why I got the other two. So I know simplicity is a route to happiness was like a little bit. I'm still like kind of that's the one I feel the most sure about, because it's like, how do you
Yeah.
really check that? But it's like, I think about if someone, I'm at the party, someone's being mean, they're also like trying to kind of talk over people about how hard it is to do X, Y, and Z, how like their way is the right way, and that you have to figure it out, and try laying out this complex, convoluted plan that, I can help you, but only I can help you. And it's going to look like this. And like, that is the type of thing where I'm just like, no, it's not that hard. As you said, the book gets written when you show up every day, day after day,
Yeah.
and shut up. And
It
that's
might
it.
just be, ironically, the value may be too long, and it might just be keep it simple
Mm-hmm.
or first principle or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you want to see yourself, as I said, saying it every day.
Mm-hmm.
So like, or simple is better, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so you just don't like people who make things. I have a huge distrust of people who write like really long responses that say nothing, and things. I feel
Right.
like a lot of scams. So you're laughing in this, and I'm like, there used to be in our industry, like the fraudsters and affiliate marketing. I would say, can you explain what your marketing tactic is to me? Because your sales are really good. And they would write me a 42-page explanation back that made no sense. And I'm like, just show me a picture. Just tell me like what you're doing. Like this is way too much complexity. I'm skeptical of people who can't explain things simply.
Yeah, that's exactly. I'd say,
Yeah.
simplicity is keep it simple, right? Right.
Right.
I'm
Keep it simple. Or,
right,
right.
right,
Ironically, you can't make the simple core value simple, which is,
right,
but keep
right.
it simple, or simple is better is probably like your core value.
Right. And those kind of then that kind of overlaps almost with the time thing, because the reality is
Yeah.
simplicity and complexity it's about time, and people make things
Right.
too complex, they're taking too much time. So I think I still have
Don't.
some more
So
noodling to
people
do.
who waste your time and
Right.
are complicated. See, you guys can't all see him now, but he's giving the visceral reaction of don't like that. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they're mean on top of it.
Right.
That would be my super
Mean,
villain.
time wasting, complicated people. Yeah. So you probably don't like politicians because they just say a lot of stuff that like doesn't, it's like word salad, and it's like it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's funny. One of my clients was just talking to me. He was like, "Oh, did you watch whatever on the news?" And I was like, "I don't watch the news." And he was like, "What?
Yeah.
You don't watch the news?" And I was just like, "No, it just feels like the biggest waste of time, and I don't want it to zap on my
Waste of
energy."
time. It's threatening. It's not like it's all about making people get riled up, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm right there with you. And again, I think that, to your point, you make this point in the book, and also that it's not just a static thing. Like, it's a worksheet. It's a course even that you offer. So this is something that I will continue to noodle on. Right, I have
Yeah.
them on my desk, and I'm going to kind of come back to these. I just did this last week, so I'm still coming back to it and
Yeah, you
seeing
should
if
be
it sits
you're
with
road
me.
testing them,
Hmm.
and all of the materials contained in the book. What the course does for people, and it's only $100, but it provides all the scaffolding. It walks you through the training. It reminds you every week and it just helps for people who want the scaffolding around it. But all the information on how to do this work is in the book.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I appreciate how easy you've made all this. So the last two questions, Robert, that I want to ask are the same two questions I ask all my guests. And the first is, what is the change that you want to see in the world?
Well, I'll be selfish on this. I would like to see us move from, we are in a mode of tribalism now, and I think tribalism is a lack of clarity in your values. It is actually from a place of weakness, because if you're clear on your values, you don't need to join teams and feel like you need to belong. And otherwise, you say, look, like, I like this thing from you guys, and I don't like this thing. It's not a all or nothing. And so I really believe that if we could get deeper clarity on our values, we could break a lot of the tribalism that is kind of tearing down our society today.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's huge. And again, points to the power of this topic and the power of core values. It goes far beyond personal anything. And this is literally for the world. So
Yeah.
I love that you brought that up. And the last question, if you had one action step that listeners could take right now today, as soon as this episode ends, as
Yeah.
soon as they take their headphones out, to start making whatever change they're trying to make in their life just a little bit easier, what could they do?
Yeah. I would go to robertglazer.com/6. I would look at those 6 questions. I would grab a cup of coffee tomorrow, and I would answer them and see what comes out for you, because I think you'll get some hints. And if you're trying to make change and make it easier, you want to go into the things that you're aligned to. So I know that's the easy answer, but I really do believe that first step unlocks a lot.
Yeah, totally. And I agree. I have links to that in the show notes if you're listening, if you're on YouTube, wherever you are. So, yeah, I think that that's a great action step to leave. Thank you so much for being here, Rob. I also, for anyone listening, I've purchased 5 copies of Rob's book, The Compass Within, and I'm going to give it away to anyone who comments, who leaves a review, a 5-star review on Apple iTunes. Talking about
Oh
this
man, you're
episode,
now
and
my best friend. Love you. Thank you.
so anyone, if you want a free copy of the book, just go leave a 5-star review. The first 5 people to do it will get a free book from me. Thank you so much for being here, Rob. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Before you go, I want to talk to you. Literally. For the first time ever in over 12 years as a coach and 4 years doing this podcast, I'm opening up my schedule to help listeners like you for free. I'm offering a free coaching session to you as a thank you for supporting this show. I help people create their healthy habits and happy lives and create positive change around their health, wealth, and relationships. Whatever you're working on, mind, body, and soul, we can cover it all. If you're struggling, I want to help you build a plan to get through it and past it. So go into the show notes and click the link that says book a free call today. I don't know how long I'll be able to keep doing this, and my schedule will fill up. So if you want to take advantage, make it happen ASAP.